Which one is number does it do? Yeah. Which do the month. Okay, thank you. Right, welcome to this Planning Committee meeting of South Oxfordshire District Council. I am Councillor David Brotherton and I will be chairing this meeting. May I remind everyone here that this is a meeting in public, not a public meeting. Only members of the public who are registered to speak are allowed to do so, and I will call on them to speak during the appropriate agenda item. The meeting is being held in our offices in Abbey House, Abingdon. Committee members are here in person, but officers and speakers are able to join remotely. The meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel for public viewing. The system allows councillors who are unable to attend in person to contribute to the meeting, but only councillors who are present in the room and hear the whole debate are allowed to vote. Some procedural matters. The speakers and other members of the public who have logged in remotely, please ensure that your microphone is muted and that your camera is off for the duration of the meeting until you are called to speak. If you share a presentation on screen, please be sure that you stop sharing this as soon as it's no longer required. The Planning Committee is the decision-making committee of the Council. It is important that the set procedure is followed. All committee members have received a full report on each planning application. We'll first hear from the planning officer, followed by the parish or town council, then objectors, supporters and local members. Each group will have 5 minutes to speak to the committee, after which members may ask questions of the group. The committee may then ask questions of clarification of the planning officer. The committee will then debate and vote on each application. Councillors wishing to ask a question or participate in the debate are asked to indicate this to myself. To myself or others by raising a hand. Voting will be by show of hand. Members, please raise your hands clearly and keep it raised to allow count to take place. If it is unclear as to how members are voting through a show of hands, I will ask the clerk to undertake a roll call of those present and how they are voting. A few housekeeping announcements. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is in the corridor immediately to the right of this meeting room, and go to assembly point 9 in the outside area beyond the fire exit. The Democratic Services Officer present will help you. Can everyone please ensure that their mobile telephones are switched to silent or switched off during the meeting? Councillors and speakers in the room, please be aware that cameras and microphones are live for the duration of the meeting and will pick up most things that are said. Members of the public who wish to leave the meeting after their application has been debated are welcome to do so by the route previously mentioned. When the meeting is finished, I will ask for confirmation that the live stream has ended. At that point, please leave the meeting and make your way out of the building, remembering to sign out as you leave. Right, go back to that's agenda item 1. Agenda item 2 is apologies for absence. Darius, have we got the apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, apologies for absence was received from Councillors Axel MacDonald, Tim Bearder, who is substituted for Councillor Georgina Heritage, Sam Casey Roray, and Catherine Keats Rowan, who is substituted for Councillor Alexandra Cantor. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, minutes of the previous meetings. To adopt and sign as a correct record the Planning Committee minutes of the meetings held 11th of October 2023, 4th of October 2023, and 20th of September 2023. All those agreed?
I agree.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, I had a point. 20th of September. Could you note that I spoke as ward member, not that I objected to the application?
Yes, I think that's it. Yeah.
We have a proposer and seconder for that as well, please.
Yeah, proposer, then seconder. Yeah, okay.
And then show of hands. Sorry, I didn't.
A show of hands, really show of hands.
I didn't see. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Declaration of interest. To receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests, and non-registrable interests on any conflict of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. I see none, so that's good. Urgent business. To receive notification of any matters which the chair determines should be considered as urgent business.
No matters of urgent
No urgent business, right? Okay, the agenda item 6 says public participation. As I said, we will take those on the agenda items. And so we will go first to the first item, which is item 7 on the agenda, which is P23 S27052 Brook Lane. Before I call on Tom to actually present this, as a local member, I did call this in But then the planning was amended and I didn't get issued notification of the amendment not to call it in. That's why it's here. I will not be speaking. I don't object to it. Tom, where's Tom? Tom Wyatt, he's there virtually, smiling away at us.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I'm here on behalf of the case officer Victoria Clark to present this application. The application was called to committee, as you heard, by Councillor Bretherton. He's withdrawn his call in, but the timing, with the timing of the agenda, it wasn't possible to withdraw the application from the agenda, and so it still needs to be determined here. The application site is in a residential area. Sorry, I'm just having a few technical issues here. The application site is in the residential area of Tame and contains a detached two-storey dwelling. Property is located on a corner plot where Brook Lane joins Spring Path. The dwelling fronts onto Brook Lane and its rear elevation faces towards the side elevation of the neighbouring property at 4 Spring Path. The site does not fall within any special area of designation. So just looking at some, I'm having problems with this computer, sorry. Looking at the plans there, you can see the existing dwelling scrolling through, so the side elevations. That's the existing rear elevation and then side elevation there facing Spring Path. Existing floor plans. The application seeks planning permission for the erection of a two-storey side extension. The existing dwelling and proposed extension would be clad in vertical timber cladding in a natural finish and roofed with powder-coated metal sheet. You can just see the extension is this element here. The proposer initially included a first floor side extension, but to address concerns raised by a neighbour, the Town Council and planning officers, the applicant submitted amended plans omitting this element. The proposed first floor rear window serving bedroom 2 has been changed to a high level. That's the window on the first floor window you can see on the plan there. The extension would result in a substantial addition to the property that would not be subservient to the original dwelling. However, officers consider the unique circumstances of the property in terms of its position on a corner plot and its siting and orientation within the site offer an opportunity to deliver a development that has a slightly alternative scale and design and is much more energy, the energy usage would be much more efficient. The proposed extension would be positioned so as not to harm the amenities of occupiers of neighbouring properties, and windows have been carefully placed and positioned to avoid overlooking. The application is therefore recommended for approval as set out in the main report. However, on reflection, we consider that a further condition is necessary to restrict the alteration of or installation of additional windows at first floor level on the rear elevation of the property to prevent overlooking of 4 Spring Path. I'll just show some photos there. So this is the looking from Brook Lane front elevation of the property you can see in the foreground there. Again, just looking at from the other side of Brook Lane, the front elevation. In the front elevation from within the site. It's a side elevation facing Spring Path with number 4 Spring Path just on the right hand side. So the extension would infill this part of the garden here. Again, just showing the relationship with 4 Spring Path. And that's the rear elevation, which so the extension would come in front of that as viewed from Spring Path there. That's it. Thank you. Any questions, please do ask later on.
Thank you, Tom. We'll come back to you after I've heard from the speakers. I have 2 registered speakers. Councillor Linda Emery, who is from Tame Town Council. Linda, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Linda. I can't see you.
Great, thank you. Good evening.
You have 5 minutes for when you actually start making your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Planning Committee and planning officers. The Tame Town Council objected to the original plan. Objected to the original application as the design would be impacted on the privacy of the neighbouring property for Spring Path to the east. The concern has been fully addressed. The Town Council also objected on grounds of proposed build form, choice of materials and window treatments. There is within the District Council's design guidance a general presumption against the original build from being replaced by another and extensions being as large or larger than the original dwelling. The design guide does not, however, preclude this, and it is recognised that in duplicating the building's original footprint, a symmetrical roof form and gable end will be presented to the Spring Path elevation. Alternative materials can be used for extensions where justified. In this case, where the predominant build from its brick and tile, the choice of wood cladding for the whole of the building seems appropriate, given the site's proximity to the Cuttlebrook Nature Reserve. The addition of roof lights will help relieve the outlook issue of outlook for bedroom 3, which would otherwise only have to view onto the gable end of 4 Spring Path. The narrow gap that would be left between 2 Brook Lane and 4 Spring Path is not ideal, but with the slight harm of this will be offset by the broader intrinsic quality of the proposed scheme. The existing building, while not without merit, is modest and is the only property of its type in the street scene. The Town Council has looked at this application twice, held a meeting with the applicant and has decided the proposal would result in a design that is largely welcomed. Thank you very much for listening to my proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Emery. Committee, are there any questions for Councillor Emery? I see none, so thank you very much for your.
So can we just clarify, are Tame Town Council now supportive of the application?
Yes, we are.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Sadler.
Sorry, just another one. 2 Brook. There was a 4 Spring Path have put an objection in. Have they withdrawn that as well now, or you said? I think you said that they've answered the concerns that were raised. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Councillor Cantor. Coffee, I presume. Thank you, Linda. Right.
Thank you very much.
Right, our other supporter is Rich Henderson, I believe, is a supporter and the applicant. Good to see you.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. You have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, hello, I'm Rich Henderson, and I'm the owner of the property. Together with my family, we're putting forward the plans that we've been discussing. I think Linda and Tom have summarised everything very nicely, so I'll try and be brief. But the plans initially have always taken a heavy focus on sustainability and looking at how we can make the house and our home fit for the future as much as for today. We've considered things and looked at how we make the house efficient to run, as well as the embodied carbon in the materials that we're choosing to progress with this. We've greatly considered how the house fits into the site and especially the local character that we would be hopefully building upon with this extension. And that starts with the fact that the property is not similar to the neighbouring houses. And so we've looked at what design inspirations and what character do we need to draw upon. And as Linda and Emery said, we've looked upon the Cottlebrook, which is one of our neighbours, at how do we enhance and support that, but also looked at the form of the property itself and repeating the form and keeping that shape helps complement the house that's already there, whilst also building on ideas and principles that have been used back in Victorian houses that we can also see around Tame. We have been throughout the planning process. We've submitted amendments, and so following the initial plans, we've discussed and taken on board feedback from our neighbours, from the town council and from the planning officer, and submitted revised plans that address all of these concerns. Specifically, the new plans have avoided being overbearing and do not cause any loss of light or privacy, especially to Shirley and her family at 4 Spring Path. The new designs actually give greater privacy, where we're able to remove one of the windows that overlooks their courtyard area. So is enhancing the privacy that they get. As Tom and Linda said, it meets is prepared to be approved and meets the guidance and criteria set out. So I'm largely here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Committee, have we got any questions? It appears we have no questions, so thank you very much for your presentation. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
I'll go back to the planning officer, go back to Tom. Tom, anybody got any questions for Tom? No, we're all quite clear. Okay, in that case, I'm looking for a proposal. Councillor Arlott.
Yeah, I'm finding this quite difficult, Chairman, because I've never sat through a planning meeting where no one's objected. We've got an application in front of us. So this is definitely a first for me. So as much as I was looking for reasons for refusal, I can't find any. So I'll propose officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Gordon Creed, thank you. Is there any debate? Oh, sorry, I'll let you put your reason behind you said yours.
I'd just like to commend the applicant for all the work that they've put in with regards to the amendments and listening to officers' recommendations and taking into account the neighbours. And I think it's a great application. So yeah. Okay, thank
you. Okay, I'll go back to Councillor Cantor to speak.
Clarification for our democratic officer. Am I allowed to participate or not?
Participate, but you can't vote.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure.
Not participate in the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'll go back to Councillor Arlott anyway to sum up.
Totally right, Councillor Ali Gordon, please.
Okay, all those in favour of the application, please show. Thank you. That's not against. So thank you very much. That is passed. Eventually, anyway, you get in person. All right. The next agenda item is agenda item 8, which will not be heard tonight. There was a request for a site visit, which we agreed to, and therefore it will be going for a site visit before the next meeting. So agenda item 8 is pulled off the agenda. Agenda item 9, which is P23 S3242, which is a full application in Horsepath. And the planning officer is Kim Gould, who sat alongside us. So, Kim, can you take us through it?
Thank you. Yeah, good evening. This application seeks retrospective planning permission to convert part of an existing single domestic garage for use as a commercial pickling business. The site lies within an established residential area in Horsepath, which is washed over by the Greenbelt. The reuse of existing buildings is an appropriate use within the Greenbelt, and both local plan policies and government guidance support the principle of growth and expansion of all types of businesses and enterprise in rural areas through the conversion of existing buildings, and as such, the principle is acceptable. In this case, there is an objection to the business from the immediate neighbours to the east of 77 Gidley Way. The neighbours at number 81 have also objected. The key concern is one of odour from the pickling process. During the assessment of this application, the Council Environmental Protection Officer was consulted in relation to odour. He advised that a formal odour assessment be undertaken to fully assess the impact from odour generated during the cooking process from the existing extraction system on neighbours. The odour assessment has been undertaken by an independent consultant who concluded that there should not be a loss of immunity to neighbours, provided the extraction system is upgraded and maintained on a regular basis. The Environmental Protection Officer has raised no objection to the application, subject to a condition being added to any planning permission requiring the existing kitchen extraction system being fitted with filters recommended by the odour assessment report. I think he's here virtually to answer any questions. That was the arrangement, didn't they? The business is modest. It has one employee, the applicant's daughter, who's here this evening, and involves a single modest vehicle act taking the produce to various outlets. Customers do not come to 77 Gidley Way, so the business does not generate unacceptable vehicle movements, and there are no objections from the Development and Highway Authority. In summary, the principle of development is acceptable. The Council's Environment Protection Officer is satisfied that, subject to upgraded filters being installed within the existing extraction system, development will not result in significant adverse impact on the neighbour amenity. There are no objections on highway grounds, and therefore there are no technical reasons to refuse the application. I have been advised by the applicant since the report went to print that the upgrade to the extraction system has already taken place with the grease and carbon filters fitted, and as such, I wish to suggest a revised wording for condition 2 to reflect this. I recommend that the condition should now use that the kitchen extract system fitted with filters specified in Chapter 7 of the Odour Control Report, with its reference number, by Noise Assessment Limited, shall be maintained in accordance with the recommendations within the Odour Control Report and retained as such. And the application is recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you, Kim. I'll come back to you for questions. Right, I have two speakers registered. This is Beverly Oakley and Fiona Cranston. So, this is Beverly Oakley first. Are you here? Says here in person. I see no one. Nope. Okay. Not do anything not here, can I? So Fiona Cranston, are you here? Yes, okay. Please, when you come to the table, you can have your 5 minutes when you.
I'm just going to be there, yeah.
Yes, please sit there. Yeah.
Sit here.
Sit down. And your 5 minutes will start when you start speaking, but please speak up.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. My name is Fiona Cranston, and I run Cranston Pickles, a small pickle business. It is a home-run business alongside a part-time job. So my week is 2 days at my part-time job and 2 to 3 days at the pickle kitchen. So I just wanted to confirm that the most I'm ever there is 3 days a week. I make a mixture of preserves, which include jams, chutneys, and pickles. I use produce from local farms around Oxfordshire, using what's available seasonally and locally. And with this, I always go and collect it myself due to working with small businesses. That's how it works. So minimal deliveries. I've been running my small business for 5 years now, 3.5 years inside the home kitchen, and now 1 year in the pickle kitchen in our home garage. It is a single garage with storage for the family, having been kept at the front and the rear, making it a T-shape. Due to the size and shape of the T-shape, it means that the pickle kitchen is very small and is only big enough for just one person to work in, which is myself. The small scale of my business means I don't need staff and cannot have them anyway due to financial costs as well as the space in my kitchen. There is no space for intention for expansion, and I run the business on my own, and that will not be changing in the future. I've had 2 visits from the local health officer since I legally registered the business with the local council when it began back in 2018, 1 inside and 1 in the garage. I received a 5-star rating on both occasions, but it was made clear from the recent inspection that the new kitchen space was much more suitable for everyone involved, including my family. The van is a small panel van and has a parking space on the driveway, and all my sales are done at small markets or online, meaning no one comes to the premises, as it is our family home and we intend to keep it separate. No customers come to the house as it is our family home, and I do all my events away from 77 Gidley Way. Orders are taken to the post office and I deliver to all my stockists myself in my van. The carbon and grease filters have been in place since we got the results of the odour test report back in July. They will continue to be maintained regularly as outlined on the report. I have a spreadsheet to record all of this and will keep it properly maintained to the light use level highlighted. It will also be checked by the health officer on visits. So it's basically added to my regular environmental health sort of data that I keep on track of. I did have a copy of that, but I'm not sure if it's.
Yeah, we just seen it.
I've just seen it. Yeah, it's basically a spreadsheet. I date it every day and I do the checks that I need to do. Yeah, there you go. So that's what I need to do for everything, and then that's daily checks or weekly checks whenever I'm in the pickle kitchen. So I'll have that to show when they'd have opportunities to see it. A day in the pickle kitchen, just to give you an overview of sort of my day in the kitchen. It runs, I'm either there 2 or 3 days a week, as I said previously. The first day will be prepping fruit or veg. So for example, for jam, I will prep the plums, put it with the sugar and macerate it overnight in the fridge. So that's one day's work, and then clean down and fill out the paperwork and things. The next day is when I will like sort of bring it to the boil and jar it up and sterilise the jars. And then again, updating spreadsheets and cleaning down. So that's the 2 days of pickling. Third day will be a mixture of admin, emails, updating spreadsheets, EHO paperwork, packing orders, stock takes, potting up pickles and labelling jars. So I'm only really using the hob and ovens 2 days a week. The other day is made up of admin that I need to do for the business to keep on top of.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Committee, have we got any questions? Councillor Dragon Lady first, I'll come back to you.
That's why you make this. I think you said you make both jam and pickles. Is that right?
Yeah, jam, pickles, and chutneys.
Is it? Sorry, is the which takes up more? Which is the biggest part of it? What's it about?
It's split quite evenly, really, because I do everything seasonally. Like fruits and vegetables come at different times of year, but I always try and have like 1 pickle, 2 chutneys, and 2 pickles, 2 chutneys and 2 jams each season, so that I don't have like a massive variety, but I'll do like a batch of 1 variety, if that makes sense.
I'm just picking up on a previous objection that was made, so I just wanted to ask you about it, if that's okay. I just wanted to understand the output from the building, and I think you've been very clear.
Okay.
And you said that you operate 3 days a week on average. I'm not trying to kind of hold you to that, but just want to understand the impact on the potential impact on neighbours. One of the objectors did suggest that there's cooking going on outside opening hours, and I did look online and I could see that you operate supper clubs.
Yes,
I'm not trying to dig you out.
Fine. I'd like to explain that.
I just wanted to ask you: is it are there hours outside of the prescribed hours as a rule? Can it be random sometimes, or is it within a restricted operating
it
time?
Tends to be during a certain, like between 9 and 5. Because basically when I do the supper clubs, they start at sort of between like sort of 6 and 7 p.m. So I have to go to the venue by 3 to get everything out set up. So it's only prep I'm doing in the kitchen.
And the actual cooking in the kitchen?
No, it's not, because I do everything fresh. So for example, I make sort of Scotch eggs, but they're fried at the venues.
Right.
I don't cook anything in the kitchen because I cook everything fresh to order on the supper clubs.
So
it comes with mayo that's made at the pickle kitchen, put in the fridge and then taken to the event. So it tends to be a lot of like cold prep, like marinades and chopping veg, and it's mainly sort of preparation rather than cooking. I don't actually do any cooking at the
that's answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions, Councillor Gordon-Green?
The only question I had from reading this before I heard you speak was how are you going to maintain and enforce the cleaning of the filters? And I can tell that it's immaculate and that you have a rota, and so my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Any further questions, Councillor Cantor?
I can read some neighbours' objection, but I was wondering if they talk to you outside this application, or they
If the neighbours have,
yes.
no, they haven't.
So they only speak up with the application and not complained.
They never spoke to us about anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is that all the questions? So thank you very much, Ms. Creston. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, the local member is Councillor James Lorry. You should speak as local member or just stay on the committee?
Stay on the committee.
Stay on the committee, okay. I'll go back to the planning officer. If anybody's got any questions for Kim?
Did you try any samples when you were there?
No further questions. Councillor Cantor, you have a question for Kim?
Were there consultation with the neighbour as part of the application? Because I know that in my ward we have, it's obviously not that scale, but some of the neighbour found that chin extraction system was not suitable and felt left out of the application system, and it's very different. It's not, but where like all the neighbors were consulted, and yeah.
Sorry, through you, Chair, the neighbours were consulted and they were invited to speak this evening as well.
Okay, so yeah,
And I have visited them, yes.
yeah, okay, so it's just I would like to avoid what happened in Whitby.
Okay. Any further questions?
Just one.
Just one.
Clarification. If there are problems, or the neighbours that identify problems with the smells and things, then presumably that comes through environmental health, isn't it? And they can make a complaint and they can be investigated.
Okay, it's not a planning issue. Yeah, okay. Therefore, I'm now looking for a proposal. What's the matter?
I would propose go with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Cantor seconded that. Yeah, okay. All right. Would you like to speak now, or I'll get Ben to speak first? So.
Yeah, I think it seems like a very well run business from what we've seen. It seems immaculately clean. I think the fact it's been running for a few years without any complaints, and at least one of the neighbours actually spoke up in support. So I think with the conditions that have been put in, it seems to me should mitigate the worry with the smell. So it seems to me like a good business.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back. Councillor Cantor, wish to speak now?
I reserve my right to speak.
Okay. I don't think it's going to be long. Any debate? Councillor Sadler.
I'd like to support, but I do note that smell is what's the word?
Nuisance.
No, sorry. It is grounded, isn't it? I mean, smell is one of the odours are one of the grounds for
Using.
Yes. Sorry. The
Material grounds.
Material grounds. Thank you. Material grounds. So odour is there, and there have been a lot of objections there from neighbours. There's quite a few things. They're quite strongly worded. I don't personally agree, because I think there's worse things than the smell of vinegar. I mean, got to keep things within reason. But it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I think the fact that it is a material ground.
Yes, I think that's why the extraction system has been enhanced and improved. Any further debate? I'll go back to Councillor.
I would just say that the product only being used for making jams and pickles, and in my experience, from the jams don't smell at all. It's a pickle, so it's only one day, one a week that's going to be any possible impact. But I think it's going to be pretty minor anyway. So
yeah,
I'm support the motion.
Oh, you're going to support it, Councillor Cantor.
So from what we heard from the presentation, it's not really an industrial scale, it's still reasonably small. The neighbors are strongly worded, but apparently they didn't, if I trust the word of the applicant, they didn't complain. Easy to complain when you have an application, but I would suggest the business is already operating and they didn't feel brave enough or annoyed enough to actually complain straight away.
I mean, just a point of correction, sorry.
Okay.
Just to explain, we believe that the neighbour did raise the issue of questions about the business to both planning, possibly to environmental health, before it came to the full planning stage. So just
but I meant during the business operation outside the application, while the business was operating into in the kitchen. So I believe that with now an upgraded version of it will even, I believe, have less smell. And I know that on my ward, when there's an issue with smell and neighbors, the environmental team is on the spot taking some evidence. So I know that the environmental team will be responsive would an issue arise. But I said the business is operating. I didn't recall for how long, but I would think that the neighbors would have made their voice heard to the council or to anyone if.
Okay.
So yeah, I support this.
Thank you, Councillor Cantor. I'll go back to Councillor
Oh.
Manning.
Sorry, Chair, could we just come back just to
I
comment?
just want to clarify that the application came to me as a retrospective application at the request of the enforcement investigation, so that they made a complaint, the enforcement team investigated it. They advised the applicant to submit a retrospective application, which they've done, and as a result of that, we've upgraded the infiltration.
Yes, so I guess it's a more reason to actually approve the application is we want to
Just want to
sort
make
it out.
sure that-
Okay, fine, fair enough. So we need to sort it out then. Okay, so go with official's recommendation.
Councillor Manning.
Just really to sum up, I think given the effort that seems to be made to limit it, the small scale of the business to 3 days a week, there has been a neighbour speaking in support of it, so it's not unanimous. Everybody is complaining about it. So I think every effort seems to be made, and it seems like a good business we support.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to a vote. All those in favour of the proposal, please show. I think that's unanimous. So thank you very much, committee. Thank you.
Yes, chili jam. So on.
Okay, we'll go to B23 S1818. It's 1818. This is in Burcott. It's the same officer, same officers can do it again.
First of all, I'd like to update members that since the report got completed, I have had confirmation from the council's forestry officer that he has no objection to this outline application. You would expect more information in relation to trees to be submitted at the reserve matter stage, such as a tree report and a landscaping plan. This application seeks outline planning permission to demolish a single detached dwelling and to erect 2 detached dwellings. There have been 14 letters of objection to this proposal from local residents, and the parish council have also objected. And a summary of their objections is set out in the report. The application is in outline only, with all matters reserved for consideration at the reserve matters stage. Therefore, design, appearance, landscaping and access are not for consideration under this outline planning application. It's just the principle of replacing 1 dwelling with 2. The site lies in the Oxford Greenbelt within the village of Burcott. The National Planning Policy Framework and Local Policy Strap 6 allow for limited infilling within villages. The proposal seeks to redevelop the existing plot by replacing the current single dwelling into 2, and as such, it's considered to fall within the definition of infill, and the principle is acceptable on Greenbelt grounds. In relation to housing policy, Burcott is defined within the local plan as a smaller village. Policy H16 seeks to limit development within smaller villages to infill in redevelopment of previously developed land or buildings. The proposal meets that requirement and is therefore acceptable on housing policy grounds. Plans have been submitted with this application to demonstrate how 2 detached dwellings could be accommodated on the site. The precise siting of these dwellings within the site is not for consideration at this stage. The loss of the existing dwelling, overdevelopment of the site and adverse impact on the established character of the area are key concerns for local residents and the parish council. The property is not listed and there are no policies within the current local plan which prevent the loss of an existing non-listed property. Overdevelopment of a site is generally assessed by looking at the amount of private amenity space available for each dwelling and the amount of off-street parking provided. In this case, although the plans are indicative only, the submitted information demonstrates that it is possible to provide each of the 2 dwellings with an amenity space which is well in excess of the council's suggested area, which is set down in the joint design guide. Similarly, the submitted drawings show that ample parking and turning provisions available within each plot, and there are no objections from highways and technical grounds at this stage. In relation to impact on character, only indicative elevations have been submitted at this outline stage and are not for consideration. Impact on the character of the area will be fully assessed at the reserve matter stage. The individual plot size following the subdivision of the site would not be, in my opinion, dissimilar from some other plots within the cul-de-sac. It's your officer's opinion that a scheme could be developed which would not result in significant adverse harm to the amenity of occupiers of neighbouring properties or to the established character of the area. Potential technical constraints, including drainage and ecology, have been considered at this stage. The council's drainage engineer has no objection to the proposal, subject to condition requiring details of surface and foul water drainage be submitted prior to the commencement of development. A preliminary roost assessment and bat activity survey has been submitted at the request of the council's ecology officer. The bat survey confirmed that the main dwelling has a maternity roost of bats, and as per the submitted bat emergent surveys report, the European Protected Species Licence application to Natural England will be required to legally permit the proposed demolition of the dwelling. In summary, the principle of 2 dwellings on this site is acceptable in Green Belt and housing utility terms, and it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kim. We'll come back to you. I have one registered speaker, which is Carol Green from Acton Planning. Karen, sorry, not.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
You have so you have 5 minutes from when you start speaking. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. This application, I'm afraid I'm going to reiterate some of the things that the planning officer has said. Its outline, all matters are reserved, but it's a great opportunity for this land to be used efficiently to provide an additional dwelling on a policy compliant site within the built up limits of Burcott at a time when, according to your website, South Oxfordshire has only a 4.2-year housing land supply. It's also an opportunity when reserved matters are considered for creating biodiversity gain through a landscaping scheme, which will include lots of planting, tree planting, and that will enhance environmental appearance. As the council doesn't have a 5-year housing land supply, in accordance with NPPF paragraph 11, there's a presumption in favour of sustainable development, which means that planning permission must be granted unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against NPPF as a whole. I'm not aware of any such adverse impacts that have such weight, and this is demonstrated by the officer's recommendation of approval. As already been said, all matters are reserved, so decisions that relate to appearance, what the houses are going to look like, means of access, the landscaping scheme, the layout, where the houses will be, where they'll be in relation to one another and where they'll be in relation to neighbouring properties, and also scale, how big they will all be made at a later date. That's not for today. Plans will be submitted as part of reserve matters that will cover those issues later. The 2 things that are under consideration today are the principle of the demolition of the existing dwelling and the principle of 2 houses on that site. In relation to the demolition, I know many objectors have talked about loss on architectural grounds. This is one of 5 modernist dwellings. However, they're not listed. They're not in a conservation area. There are no policies to prevent their demolition. Any group value they any group value they have has been diminished because original windows have been changed. Several have been extended, and high boundaries mean that visually they aren't read as a group. They don't all stand together. Particularly those on the corners have very high hedges, and that also means that for many properties, particularly at ground floor level, the light that I think was probably originally intended to come through side windows simply is blocked for a lot of the year due to high hedges and the boundary treatment. There's therefore no reason to protect this dwelling on the grounds of it being part of a group of 5 other dwellings on those architectural grounds. In addition, as already has been said, the council's ecologist has now raised no objections to the proposal, subject to conditions being attached to a planning permission, obviously the necessary licensing and work being done as a result of the bat survey. So ecology can be protected. And in terms of can 2 dwellings being accommodated on the site, the officer has explained that that is the principle of 2 dwellings is policy compliant. In addition, this site is 25 metres wide. The width of the plot to the south is 10. The width of the plots across the road are 10. Clearly, 2 houses can be accommodated. Their relationship to one another and the neighbouring dwellings will be determined at reserve matters stage. And at that stage, there will be an opportunity when the scheme is designed, obviously we will have the knowledge of the objections, so concerns can be taken into account at that stage. Positioning can be secured to ensure that neighbours do not suffer harm, because I'm quite sure that will be against policy, so we wouldn't want to do that.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Okay, in terms of trees, the tree officer has raised no objection, subject to conditions being attached. And I think in light of the presumption in favour of development, due to the lack of the 5-year housing land supply and the fact that the proposal is development plan compliant and the lack of harm it will cause, in addition, the fact that the tree officer and the council's ecologist have accepted the proposal. Okay. Invite your approval, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty, have we got any questions for Ms Green?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Regley.
Would you agree that these are quite, the existing 5 dwellings are quite interesting modernist group?
I don't think they read as a group. I think their value has been diminished because of changes to them. I don't think you don't stand in the street and visually see all of them. You know, they're hidden. Changes have been made. They've been updated.
I understand, but when they were built, do you think they were taken as being sort of leading edge and modern and up to date?
I'm not an architect. I'm not a, you know, I'm not a specialist in terms of.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time and your presentation.
Pleasure, thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to Sam Casey Rayher, who was not feeling well earlier on, so she's not joined us in person.
Hello, hi committee. Yeah.
Hi,
sorry,
Sam.
I'm feeling quite coughing coldy, so excuse me if I splutter when I speak to you. Yeah, just as the ward councillor, I just wanted to say a few things that I hope the committee can consider, please, on this one. First of all, of course, it's in the green belt, so I think it would be really good if you could be sure that you've got the definition for infill, because this is really key to this application. It's being presented and agreed. You know, sorry, the officer is saying that it's because it's infill in the green belt, because of course in general there should be no development in the green belt if it impedes on the openness of it. So doubling the size, that's what effectively you're doing, isn't it? You're doubling the size of this. You're making it 1 house into 2 houses. So doubling the size must have some impact on the openness. So I'd be grateful if you could just be sure that you understand the definition of what infill is. I think the officer can help you there. The second thing is, and I understand the officer's report says there's no policy on this, but it's something that I think you should just bear in mind, is that there's been so much research coming out saying that for every demolition and rebuild, there's far more carbon emissions involved in that than any refurb. So if you refurb or change an existing building, it's much less of an impact on our attempts to get to net zero than if you knock something down. Of course, there's embodied carbon that you're then releasing if you knock things down. I think the important thing, though, in the officer's report is paragraph 6.25, when the county council talks about, let me just get that up exactly, if I can, talks about the area of this, that this is where there's no, gosh, of course I can't find it now, but 6.25, where of course there's no public transport. Every development here will be dependent, but heavily dependent on private car use. So again, you're going to be doubling the car use here, the number of cars being used, whatever that is, from you know, X2 to 2X now. So it's just something that I think really, even though it's one house becoming 2, and it doesn't seem very much, of course, if every house was doubled inside, if we doubled the number of houses across Oxfordshire, South Oxfordshire, then of course we'd have double the traffic. So it's something to be thought of. It's not a sustainable location in terms of travel. or active travel or public transport. There's one bus that goes along there and it's not very regular, and there's no proper active travel. So those are the three things that I just want to mention to the committee as the ward councillor, that I'd be grateful if you could consider those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Casey Roher. Committee, have we got any questions for Sam? Yes, Councillor Sadler.
Were there some pictures of? Did I miss?
Sorry?
Did I? Were there some pictures of?
No,
this?
no. No, Sam didn't have any pictures. No. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Casey Roher. Okay.
Can I have a question, please?
You have a question? Sorry. Yeah.
Have there been any previous infills in Burcott? Is this something that there is a precedent for, or would this be the first infill?
There's been a few over the last few years, yes, and they've all hinged on the definition of infill. Well, no, not all hinged on that. I mean, I don't want to reduce them all to that, but because it's washed over by Greenbelt, infill has been an important discussion point and a reason to give or not to give planning permission on those. Yes, it's if you drive through Burcott, it seems to be just a line of houses along the road, but actually some of those lanes go down to the river, and they have usually have a sort of crescent shape, and then you have those sporadic developments that's happened over time in a sort of woodland. It's very idyllic in lots of ways, and there's lots and lots of wildlife and ecology, and it goes down to the river, so you have that riparian ecology habitat as well. So it is very important. I noticed that there's discussions about bats, etc. So I think you can understand that it's there's really good wildlife and really rich biodiversity down there.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Casey Roher. Okay. Thank you. Okay, committee, we'll go back to the planning officer for questions. I'm sure saw that what actually asked the question that Councillor Casey Roher asked. No?
No.
Councillor getting married.
Yeah, just for clarification with infills. So would it definitely be classed as infill, the fact that one building is being taken down and two putting up in the place?
Yeah, the National Planning Policy Framework allows for infill within villages which are within the green belt. So if it was in a remote location within the green belt, we wouldn't be allowing the existing and new planning, but because it's within the built limits, Burcott, and you're effectively replacing one for two, it's an infill site.
Okay, that answers that one. Any further questions, Councillor Cantor?
I know that the neighbourhood plan doesn't have much weight because it's still on the draft stage, but I was wondering, speculating that the draft would be the actual plan, how would this application, would it contradict the neighbourhood plan, or we can't really talk about it?
Can I give a general answer?
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, it carries limited weight in this circumstance, but a neighbourhood plan has to comply with the policies of the local plan, so there has to be a conformity, and so it would be very unlikely, in my opinion, there would be a divergence in the approach. Obviously, it might be that the local plan picks up on some particular issues, but in respect of infill, it would not change the definition. And here, this particular house, which sits between two other houses in a distinct row, where there's also development on the other side. So I'd say this is classic infill.
Thank you for your clarification.
Yeah, there was a question raised about its uniqueness. If you look at your plan on page 127, you'll see the plot immediately across the road has been subdivided. Okay, are there no further questions?
Could I just?
Yes, you can.
Just briefly.
I need, for the sake of the recording, I need to say who's speaking because they don't know. So it's Councillor Heritage speaking.
I just wanted to check something, because there was reference made to the modernist construction and the walls that have been current building with no cavity walls. This doesn't count as a non-standard construction as such, does it? This is a mortgageable, and we're just looking at what we're replacing, what with, you know, what we're looking to replace.
Really sorry, Councillor Heritage, we wouldn't have that level of detail in
Sure,
terms
that's
of,
fine.
it wouldn't be directly relevant to the plan
Okay.
areas. Obviously, it looks very much if it's aerated of the who's controlling the presentation can get the drawing up again, but you'll see that it's as I say, very much of its time.
I was just trying to consider the quality of the construction, if you like, as
it's
it
not
stands at the
necessary for them
moment.
to submit that detail.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, no further speakers, no further questions. I'll go for a proposal, please. Councillor James Lorry.
I go to support the officer's recommendation.
Okay. That's seconded. Councillor Harlott seconded. Do you wish to speak now, Councillor Harlott, or? Well, that's all your right. You let Councillor James Lorry speak first.
As others have mentioned, by the looks of it down the road, a number of these plots have been split in two. It seems like it's a nice area to actually split and do an infill. And yeah, it all seems, so far it's just on planning, isn't it? We haven't seen what the buildings are.
We are the planning committee. We can only consider planning matters.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Any further debate? Is there any debate? See no debate, so I'll go back to Councillor Harlott to.
Yeah, the reason I support the chairman is quite simply, and you made the point, the plot opposite. It may have been divided. I can't say it has been. I don't think you could say it has been either. But it's the same size as the plot opposite, which takes two properties. The speaker in favour mentioned the land supply. But allegedly we've only had a 4.2 year land supply. These figures kind of been plucked out of the air all over the place. It's unfortunate that Burcott doesn't have a neighbourhood plan, although it's a pre-examination, because if it did, it would only need a 3-year land supply there. I'm correct in saying that. So one could argue the point there, but unfortunately they don't have a neighbourhood plan. As I say, it's outline stage at the moment, and I think even the speaker said that when it comes to detail, there will obviously, or according to the speaker, there may well be people objecting to it. So we can obviously we may wish to make another decision at that moment in time if we don't like the design of the buildings. But at the moment, as outlined, plot sizes I think is fine, and yeah, I'll support the application.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go back to your original proposal and ask him to sum up. There's not much to sum up, but
yeah. Can let you go ahead.
Okay, so we go ahead with the vote then. All those in favour of the proposal, please show. And that is again unanimous. So thank you very much, committee. Right. Right, so it's 7 o'clock. I'm just proposing a slight comfort break, if we don't mind. I'll hit the loop.
For those online, we're taking a short break, but we'll be back soon.
just thank you.
Okay, welcome back. Move on to P23 S2337, Chiltern View Mawson. And the planning officer is Simon Skipson. Did you see us that one, Simon? So, Simon, take it away, please.
Thank you, Chair. The application now before the committee seeks outline planning permission for a detached two-storey dwelling with an existing garden land at a property in Morton. The layout and access arrangement would be fixed at this stage, and all other matters would be reserved for subsequent approval. The site does not fall within the AONB or a conservation area, and the development plan allows for infill in this settlement. There's an existing conservatory and outbuildings shown dotted in green. They would be demolished, and the proposed dwelling would be accommodated as shown on the screen. This is an infill proposal with private amenity spaces in accordance with the design guide recommendations. There will be parking for 2 cars in accordance with the adopted county council standards and the new access at the front of the site. The dotted roof form, which might just be legible on the screen, is indicative, although the plan does show a single-storey element at the southeast corner nearest to the boundary. Whilst appearance and scale are reserved matters, the agent has provided an indicative street elevation which demonstrates how a 2-storey property might be accommodated. As members will note, the site is between a bungalow and a substantial 2-storey dwelling. There is an opportunity for a transition between the two. The report sets out the case for granting approval. I will show some photos to put this into context. This is the existing site frontage with a neighbouring property at Cedar House on the left and the existing bungalow at Chiltern View on the right. There is significant architectural variety within the area, with variations in the number of stories, heights, plot widths, and the placement of dwellings relative to the highway. Officers do not consider a 2-storey property here to be objectionable in principle, noting that the height and appearance wouldn't be fixed at this stage. And this is another shot straight on of the existing conservatory you can see in the middle. And the indicative street elevation shows how the height between the 2 sets of properties could be achieved. The existing parking area at Chiltern View on the right would be retained. That's a close-up. And the proposed access would be going in the middle of where the fence is currently. There's no objection from the local highways authority. The boundary treatment for the plot would be secured under a later reserved matters submission. There would be scope for soft planting to be secured. Following the demolition of existing structures, officers consider the plot wide enough to accommodate the proposed dwelling. This is the existing garden viewed from the front. The same viewed from the rear. And this is looking to the west, where the retained garden would be to serve the existing bungalow. And looking to the east towards the neighbouring property at Cedar House. The neighbour's garden, the proposed dwelling would be to the left and aligned with the existing properties to the west. Whilst the dwelling would be visible from the neighbour's garden, this is a relatively normal relationship within the ribbon of housing. Privacy measures, particularly at first floor level, could be incorporated or conditioned at the reserved matters stage if they're deemed to be necessary at that stage. The neighbour's outlook from their main windows would not be materially affected. And the dwelling would be mostly aligned with the recessed part of Cedar House. There would be a single-storey projection beyond the neighbour's building line, but this would be relatively modest and there would be no breach of the 45-degree rule. Now, it is acknowledged that the ground floor window at Cedar House would be impacted by the proposal, as this window faces towards the flank wall of the proposed dwelling. However, it is evident that the window is a secondary side opening. The main window serving that room is a much larger southeast facing opening. And the light and outlook from this window would not be harmed by the proposal. To summarise the main points in the report, the principle of infill housing in this location is acceptable in principle, and officers consider the plot large enough to accommodate a dwelling of the proposed footprint. There's no objection from highways to any aspect of the parking and access arrangement, and the principle of accommodation being spread across 2 stories is not considered objectionable, having regard to the significant height differences between the existing properties and the architectural variety in the locality. Officers are satisfied an appropriate scale, appearance, and landscaping scheme could be secured at the reserved matter stage. And as there are no overriding neighbouring amenity issues, the proposal is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Okay, thank you, Simon. See you there. We'll come back to you later. Okay, I have 3 speakers registered. The first one is Councillor Linda Emery, again from Tame Town Council.
Good evening, panel. Thank you for listening to me. Tame Town Council's Planning and Environment Committee unanimously objects to this planning application, as it would be overdevelopment of this site. A visit of the property will demonstrate how constrained the immediate area will appear if built to the proposed height and indicative form. The site provides a gap in the developed frontage that provides a long view southward into the countryside from the main access into the village and the war memorial. The proposed dwelling would appear as squeezed in and inappropriate in this location. The distance between the proposed dwelling and Cedar House is not acceptable in the small hamlet. It is not a suburb or part of the main settlement of Tame. Tame Town Council has also concerns regarding the parking provision. It is inadequate to have space only for 2 cars serving a 3 or 4 bedroomed house in a location where there is no safe cycle route to the main road network and where weather can render footpaths to Tame impassable. The Highways Officer has questioned the suitability of the location, stating the local planning authority should give due consideration to the poor accessibility of the site and future residents, likely high dependence on private travel. They have not objected, but have instead deferred the decision on this issue to the District Council. It appears, however, that their generally positive comments about the possibility of cycle use from the site is contrary to other decisions made in Moreton. Most notably, the inspector who dismissed the appeal for the nearby refused application of 5 homes, P21 S4806, stated, considering that the foregoing residents of Moreton are unlikely to regularly access services and facilities by active travel or public transport. As a result, new housing such as that proposed would result in residents being largely reliant on the car and the associated carbon emission this would entail. It is clear the site is considered unsuitable. Moreton has in the last 10 years seen many new homes delivered, as a small other village infill would be technically permissible, but the matter of unsustainability should be given very great weight. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you. I finished.
Thank you, Councillor Emery. Chris, has anybody got any questions for Councillor James Lorry?
Hello, Councillor.
Hello.
Out of curiosity, have you actually walked between Tame and Moreton? Because you say that you say that it's not tracked in the sense of it's not a good footpath.
No.
Which I would argue, because I used to do it every day, and it's tarmac all the way along.
Which footpath are you talking about? Are you talking along the?
Concentrate on the application.
Well, it is a bit. I just feel that's a bit misleading.
Okay.
because it is tarmacked all the way along.
Well, it's a road. It's a 60
actually-
mile an hour road.
No, the footpath that goes over the bridge that is 5 minutes and then you're in Tame that connects to the Phoenix Trail.
But it gets quite muddy. It's not. I don't believe it is sustainable for bikes and for people walking into Tame with large amounts of shopping.
You've not done it.
Any further questions? Councillor Sadler.
Yeah, I just slight take issue with. I was just looking at the street view, and the main road that comes into Morton. Then you've got the memorial, and then straight ahead you've got the house. One of the new houses there. But I think also the gap where this house would infill doesn't appear to offer views, far-reaching views for the countryside. I think there's other parts of Morton where you can get that. I don't think it would be a massive loss just there. Your thoughts on that?
Councillor Emery, are you there?
I'm sorry, I didn't. Where the road by the memorial, if we're talking about the memorial, is quite a sharp bend, and if you could envisage that, like an extra 2, 3, or 4 cars on that actual bend, it could be very, very dangerous.
Well, you can't. Well, parked cars on the road itself, you mean?
Yes, it's parked on the road. Yes.
Because I think the proposed house would have its own parking, wouldn't it?
It's two cars for a 4-bedroomed potential house, which is a family. So you could quite easily have, in years to come, a couple of teenagers or parents, extra cars. It would. I do believe there would be extra cars.
Right, can we move on? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
The number of bedrooms in the house has not been decided or declared. Therefore, that's not a statement you can make or justify. Okay, thank you, Councillor Emery. Right, Jack Spence is my second speaker, and he's online as well. I see that.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Okay, you have 5 minutes when you start speaking.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for allowing me the time to address you this evening regarding this application. I speak on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Nicol, who live directly next door to the application site and would be most affected should the development be approved. Whilst as noted within the committee report, we accept that the site does form a small gap in an otherwise built up frontage. We do have significant concerns over the size and the scale of the development, which in turn will have the potential to have a substantial negative impact upon the character and appearance of the area, as well as the access to light within the kitchen of my client, which was touched on by Mr. Kitson. Obviously, we're aware of the comments from the Town Council, and we fully support those as well. As highlighted by the objection from the Town Council, Morton is a spacious and open area with deep and large plots. Where the plots are shallower in depth, they're often substantially wider as a result. And this applies to the existing property on the application site, with the existing bungalow being quite shallow, but equally quite wide. The proposed 2-storey dwelling in this location would appear cramped and out of place, sandwiched between a 1.5-storey dwelling to the east and a bungalow to the west, with a thin and shallow plot. This would also have the effect of reducing the width of the existing bungalow's plot as well. This harm is referred to by officers at paragraph 6.7 of the committee report, and obviously I'm paraphrasing here, but generally speaking, the council considered that because the site was not within an area worthy of protection, the proposal was therefore considered acceptable. We disagree with this view for 2 reasons. Firstly, the site is located in very close proximity to the edge of the Morton Conservation Area. And secondly, we'd also suggest that given the scale and size of a two-storey dwelling within this small plot, as shown on the indicative plans, we believe that there will be real damage to the character of the street scene and the surrounding area, as well as potentially detracting from the special interest of the conservation area. Turning to the issues of light, I hope members received my email yesterday, which hopefully demonstrated the potential impact of this proposed development. And again, whilst we acknowledge that there is a second light, as mentioned by Mr. Kitson, we remain of the view that the proposed development would materially harm the amenity of the occupants in Cedar View. In respect of parking and access, we, again, like the Town Council, note highway officers considered the site and, quote, that it has poor accessibility and future residents will likely have a high dependence on private travel. There are no pedestrian provisions separate from the unlit carriageway. With this in mind, a dwelling here could not really be considered sustainable in our view. Furthermore, no information has been submitted by the applicant to demonstrate appropriate vision displays can be achieved from the access, and these matters are only made worse given the prevalence of on-street parking which occurs directly outside of the proposed access at the moment. In addition, it does not appear to have been demonstrated that vehicles could enter and exit the existing bungalow in a forward gear either. Finally, we remain significantly concerned that the committee does not have sufficient information available to it in order to make a decision on the application today, primarily due to a lack of biodiversity net gain information, which has not been provided by the applicant. The failure of the council to notice what we believe to be some substantial tree removal from the site, which took place prior to the application being submitted, as well, is also a major concern. And we are of the view that were a biodiversity net gain document to be submitted, it would transpire that actually it would not be possible to meet the required biodiversity net gain on the site, especially when taking into account the trees along the front boundary that have been removed. I believe these trees can still, that have been removed, can still be seen on Street View when looked at historically. We do not agree with the council's opinion. Oh, sorry, I've said that already. We asked members to refuse this inappropriate and unsustainable application, which would harm the site's biodiversity value, cause a loss of light to neighbours, and create a potential highway hazard. However, should members feel that the proposal is acceptable, we would request that a further condition is applied to any planning permission to ensure that any first floor side-facing windows are privacy glazed and unopenable. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spence. Chrissy, has anybody got any questions for him? I see none, so thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, thank you. All right, my third speaker is Jake Collins, who's the agent and a supporter. And Jake, you have 5 minutes starting when you first speak.
Chairman, members of the committee, can I thank you for the opportunity of addressing you this evening. We do have a full and comprehensive report before you from the planning officer recommending that permission be granted, and I would commend the recommendation to you. I do, however, want to briefly touch on some of the key planning issues and, more importantly, perhaps respond to some of the comments from the other speakers, including the Town Council. What I would wish members to note is that the Town Council's own in-house planning officer recommended that the original application be supported, and that the Town Council did not give any formal consideration to the revisions to the scheme. I just wanted to make that clear as a point of context as much as anything else. You also heard Councillor Emery mention another appeal in Morton. I think the context within which that has been mentioned is a fundamental misread of the inspector's decision in the context of the spatial policy of the local plan. Spatial policy of the local plan does allow infill development in Morton as a matter of principle. The scheme that was being referenced was not an infill scheme in Morton, but a scheme of 5 dwellings that sat outside that spatial policy. So I think to reference that is not entirely correct in the context of what members are considering today. I should also add, in terms of sustainability, I lived in Morton myself for 10 years. I now live in Tame. I regularly walk every other day through Morton, follow the path. It's a well-made path. You can access it. And likewise, when I lived in Morton, I did my shopping in Tame and I walked back. Not to say everybody would do that, so I just wish to make that point. I'd also add, in terms of views, I secured permission 10 years ago for the house that Mr. Nichol, the objector, now lives in. That was a yard that was open, and you had a view through. It wasn't it was a view back to the Chiltern Hills. It wasn't a particularly protected view, and I actually quite like the houses that Mark now occupies along with his neighbour. To then suggest that the view within an enclosed garden becomes important seems contradictory to the context of that historic permission that was granted some 10 years ago. I've got that off my chest now, so I just wanted to say a few things on that. This application you do have in front of you is submitted in outline with only layout and access for consideration. I don't need to tell you what your policy says on infill. I think you've addressed it earlier, but this is a small gap in a built-up frontage, and there have been 9 other dwellings approved in Morton in the last 10 years, all of which have been deemed infill. The layout that you have has been designed with regards to the relationship to neighbouring properties. There would be no significant adverse effect in terms of matters like outlook and privacy, albeit I accept that the details of that scheme will come forward at reserved matter stage. But the relationship that you will get is typical of any other residential street. The pattern of the layout development also follows what we see in Morton and how Morton has evolved and grown over recent years. The plot width is comparable to, and in fact greater than, the number of other dwellings in the street. You have a 2-storey dwelling on one side, a single-storey dwelling on the other, and the idea is to produce a transition in scale, which actually benefits because the application site is slightly lower and set at a lower level than the bungalow itself. The Highway Authority have not objected. The provision of parking of 2 spaces is suitable for anything up to a 4-bedroom dwelling in this location. I'm not aware of major on-street parking along this section of the lane, and in fact the property opposite has recently undertaken works to provide additional off-street parking, so I haven't seen and never have seen in 10 years highway problems or issues. So in the context of what your development plan is saying about infill development, I firmly believe that this is fully compliant, and I would therefore commend the recommendation to you. Thank you.
Okay, can we any questions from Mr. Collins? Councillor Sadler.
Yeah, the previous speaker, Jack, I think it was, made a very good point about plots being either very long or very wide. And of course, that would take that amenity away from that, wouldn't it? Because he rightly points out that they would then be 2 very narrow plots. What's your view on that?
Sorry, narrow or depth?
Depth. Sorry, they don't have a lot of depth anyway, because relative to Cedar House, they're nowhere near as long, are they? So that would make a very narrow plot.
Sorry, I'm just deciding in my mind whether I should say what I feel I ought to say, and I'm going to say what I think I ought to say. The depth of the garden to Cedar House is unauthorised. The planning permission that was granted by this council for the depth of the garden is equivalent to the gardens on this proposed scheme.
Okay, just make sure everything is directed, please, to the chair.
Chair, the plots in the developed houses opposite are very long and narrow.
Yeah, we're not into debate yet. We're asking for some questions. Okay. Any further questions for the planning officer or the planning agent? No further questions. Thank you, Jane. Okay, we'll go back to questions now to our planning officer, Sir Simon. I'm sure there are loads of questions. So I don't see any. That's it. I will ask you, I think there's a question there about plot size. I'm not concerned about it, but Simon, would you like to just explain it a bit more?
Well, the size of the plots certainly far exceeds the design guide recommendations for minimum private amenity spaces. Like I've touched on in the presentation, there's a wide variety of plot sizes. There are some smaller plots in the area, including one next to Acorn Lodge, which was promoted by this committee. And there are much bigger plots. I think part of the attractive character of the village is the variety. No, I don't think this would compromise that. It would really add to the varied architectural styles and plot sizes in the village. There isn't a prescribed standard for this type of scenario.
Okay, my other question will be about parking and number of parking spaces.
County Council adopted standards which are also adopted by our local planners that require 2 parking spaces for the size of property. 2 off-street parking spaces, and that's what's being provided under the proposed scheme. Hence, the Highways Authority haven't objected.
Okay, have they indicated the number of bedrooms in this property, or is there no indication?
Well, that scale is a matter that would come out at the reserved matter stage. Anything up to 4 bedrooms requires 2 parking spaces to be provided.
Okay, that's all. I just want to clarify it. I wasn't hearing it.
No, I mean, if they were to come in and add a number of bedrooms over 4, then we would be looking at whether the amount of parking is.
I'm sure they're aware of that.
So it remains a material consideration until the reserved matter stage.
Yeah. Okay, committee, are there any further questions for planning officer? Councillor Sadler.
So that parking is a concern for town council, isn't it? They clearly mentioned about parking on the street and the risk that because it's outline planning permission, and if that was granted, based on a house, which we don't know how many bedrooms and 2 spaces, that there's likely to be an overspill onto the lane.
Well, we can only work with the adopted parking standards. We start going beyond what's been adopted in part of the development plan to different territory. Yeah, I mean, there's a minimum of 2 parking spaces on that block, which is what they're required to provide. I think you would have seen from the arrangement at the existing bungalow, the properties fill the driveways and back out onto that road. Vehicle speeds are extremely low along that road. But the proposal is compliant with the development.
If they decided to put a 5-bedroom property on, then they'd have to apply for parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that would go beyond the approved layout. So
yeah,
potential issues.
There was a question also with the debate about vision displays, but I'm sure that's actually because the boundary treatment is not part of this plan.
Yes,
and that's not an issue. It will be corrected or addressed in due course.
Yeah, we couldn't impose a condition requiring boundary treatment to be maintained above a certain level. Well, we don't have the boundary treatment before us. Highways are satisfied that the access is safe in highway terms.
There was also a comment raised about biodiversity on the site. Did you cover that in a condition?
Yeah, we'd be requiring biodiversity enhancement details to be provided as a condition of consent, and that would be discussed with our college.
Right. I'm looking for a proposal then, please. Councillor Arlott.
Yeah, I'll propose officer recommendation, Chairman, and I'll tell you why now before I even get a seconder. I think all the points that council have raised are covered in the report, and the officers obviously just mention those as well. It's well within car park standards, if we like it or not. I would prefer to see 1 car park space per bedroom, but it doesn't work like that. And the information is on page 137 on parking standards. So that's all there. The objections, if there were on vision displays, that will come out in detailed planning. That's in the officer's report. There was a mention on windows. That was answered as well. It's well within the design guide, especially for the size of a plot. So we couldn't refuse that. The agent did mention that it'd be a maximum, or that's what I heard, of 4 bedrooms. So that obviously justifies the 2 car park spaces. But I don't think personally it affects either neighbour. Obviously, the neighbour that's selling the plot of land, it won't affect them, that's for sure. And I don't believe it affects the other one. We were showing the pictures of the windows and the light coming through the windows, so I don't think there's any objection there. Look, we're in a situation, and I've said this quite a few times now. These these villages have big plots of lands. And we're getting lots of applications coming forward for infill. The previous officer mentioned what infill was, and this qualifies as infill. And I believe, looking at some of these plans, we're going to get many, many more of these applications coming forward for infill plots. And if we were to think about refusing this, I'd love to go to the appeal because we'd get absolutely slaughtered on this, unfortunately. But the facts are, it's within policies, and I don't think we can go against policies on this application. Hence my reason for proposing officer recommendation.
Right, thank you, Councillor Roberts. And we give a second there. Who have a second there? Councillor Heritage.
Well, I'll speak now, and it's really just along the same lines as Councillor Arlott, that what we have in front of, I hope objectors can appreciate that we only have an outline application. All we can decide is whether this plot is suitable for a development. The devil's in the detail, but I don't see any material reasons to object to it. And as Councillor Arlott said, this is potentially an infill plot, and we are going to see more of those. And I think we have to be very careful about that. I don't see a material objection to this on principle, just on the outline application itself.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Heritage. Right, it's open for debate then. Does anybody wish to debate it? Councillor Sadler.
Yeah, I'm just concerned as to why it is an outline planning application and not a full planning application.
Because that's the way they choose to go.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost less. It costs them less on the architect's side, but it doesn't cost less to us to sit in.
Can the officers just explain that?
Chair,
You're right.
through you, it's the applicant's prerogative. That is, the system allows for either outline or full applications, and we assess those on their merits. But there are instances where we prefer to see a more detailed application, and sometimes we go back to insist on those details. But this would not be one of those situations. Yeah, they are entitled to make this form of application.
Thank you, Seduce. Councillor Cantor.
So just to clarify, they will have another application to clarify the details. So all those.
There will be another application.
Yeah.
For reserve matters. It might not come to us. Because it's acceptable, it probably won't. But
but I think it was important to clarify that another application will
there'll be a second reserve matters application. Yeah, well, on most applications there are reserved matters, so there's some things not agreed at the time. This is just there's a lot not agreed at the time. Yeah. Okay, further debate. I see no further debate. I have to go back to Councillor Arlott to sum up.
Yeah, I would just go back to the question on outline. If I was the person probably selling the land off, I would probably want to go to the council and to find out if it was possible for me to build a property on that house. Hence the outline. It doesn't cost me a lot of money to do that. It just costs me a few little drawings here and a plan application. Where the big money is when you get an architect, well, it is these days anyway. If there's any architects around here, they're doing quite well. But that's where the money is now, is the architectural side of it, and that's the big money. So I can quite understand why someone's just feeling the ground to see if an outline plan that application would work. They showed the plan of the base of the area that they wish to build. I think that's obviously determines. The way I think about the application, it's kind of laid out there, but it's just the square plots. That's all it's showing. So I think that's all to do with it doesn't cost a lot. It doesn't cost the amount of money to do an outline that it does a detail. It's as simple as that. So I think that basically covers the point. So
okay, thank you, Councillor Arlott. You've summed up well. We'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour of the application of the proposal, please to accept that. Please show. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. 7 against. 2. Yeah. Okay, thank you, committee. Thank you for your time this evening. We meet again.
22nd of November.
How many?
22nd of November.
22nd of November.
Bertie, please can we end the broadcast?